welcome back to another episode of the Ophelia Rigault Show. And this show, I am so excited to finally have Miss Judith Brown here. We're going to be talking today about building Black community, 50 years of change, growth, and belonging. So stay with us, you're going to learn a lot. So Ms. Judith, thank you for being here. It's been a journey. I'm excited to talk to you. When I moved to Kingston, I felt alone. I came here with my ex-husband at the time, and I grew up in Toronto. I was born in Trinidad, and I knew community. You know, I had my church, and when I came here, I didn't feel like I belonged.
Wow.
And when I came to an event at a Black History Month, you spoke. And I walked into that room, and I looked around. I can't remember where it was.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, this is where all the Black people in Kingston reside. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted you here because I think it's important to have leaders and elders like you share their story. So tell the audience and share what brought you to Kingston.
Well, I'd be happy to. You know, when you mentioned that word elders, I remember the first time I was referred to as an elder. I wasn't very happy about that. But let me tell you, it has grown. I now love it and appreciate it because I feel it's a term of respect.
Yes.
And as I have grown in years, well, I am an elder in the community, and I have been in this community for over 50 years. I first came here to go to Queen's University. Upon graduation from Queen's University, I married my husband, who was a teacher, and because he already had a job here, I ended up staying in Kingston. And as I said earlier, I've been here for over 50 years, so raised a family, worked here, and I too worked here as a teacher.
So being in Kingston for 50 plus years, you must have seen a lot of change and growth. When you started teaching 50 years ago, what was some of your experience as a Black woman being in a community? How did you navigate that?
Well, to tell you the truth, as I look back on it, I must say I was well received. You know, to go, I think the parents at that time, well, I taught many different grade levels, but I remember I was teaching at the intermediate level, and the principal came to me and asked me if I would teach kindergarten. And I said to that principal, are you crazy for me to leave grade 8s and go and teach kindergarten? Well, I thought about it, and then overnight, I had a change of heart. I thought to myself, that's the only grade I've never taught.
Right.
So I went to the principal and I said, I'll do it. I'll teach kindergarten. Well, let me tell you, kindergarten became my favorite. I love teaching kindergarten. And it also led to some pretty exciting life experiences. Through teaching kindergarten, I was able to get a job in Egypt and then later in China.
Oh,
but
wow.
teaching here in Kingston, where I've spent most of my teaching life, it was pretty exciting because as I look back on it, I think that many of the parents, they were looking for diversity.
Okay.
And my classes were always filled, and they were filled first. And, you know, some of the parents said, it was at a time when we were changing from all-day kindergarten or from half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten. We were going through changes. And I remember many of the parents said, it's not important to us what time the children come, whether it be morning, afternoon. What's important is that they have Mrs. Brown.
Wow, that's an honor.
It was quite an honor. So I was well received. I got many complimentary letters from parents. And on top of that, as you can imagine, I was one of the few Black teachers within the system. As I recall, I was trying to think about this. I think that in the full system of Frontenac County, as it was known then, and it's now the Limestone, I would say that I knew of about 5 Black teachers in the whole county.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I think those numbers are about the same today. So you know, we need to see some movement there.
We do, because representation matters. What about, you said did you raise your family in Kingston?
I sure did. I had 4 children, and they all went to to schools here in Kingston. And all in all, they had pretty good times while here. You know, if they ever ran into any incident or something, I felt they were being misunderstood, I just went to the school, mentioned it, and talked about it, and it was worked out.
So what are some of the challenges that they might have faced as being black children in a predominantly white school?
My children, actually, because they had both their dad and I as teachers, we kind of knew the system.
Right.
And so we kept on top of it. But friends of mine would say to me, you know, Judy, you're not having those problems because you're a teacher. And they would tell me of problems that they were having with their children. And some of the things I've heard is that particularly when kids made the transition from elementary to high school, sometimes the teachers would put them in the unacademic strain
Right.
of things. And, you know, parents would have to go and explain that, no, they wanted their children to be on the more academic side of things. And those children were quite capable in many instances, but they faced that. And another parent told me that sometimes their child felt that the teacher did not call on them. They'd have their hand up to answer things, but yet the teacher would never call on them. And I think it was where teachers still expected the black kids to be athletes more
Right.
than being students.
Right,
So
right.
I think the problem really was being perceived by the teachers and parents. I remember my daughter was in one of the lower grades. I don't really want to point out but anyway, she would come home to me and complain that the teacher had not put her in a reading group. And so being a teacher myself, I had taught my child to read from an early age. She was quite advanced. So I had to go to the school and speak to the teacher and tell her that my daughter was really upset. And the teacher said, well, you know, the other kids are reading so much more. And I said, have you ever asked my daughter? Anyway, the thing that happened is I made that teacher notice my daughter. So about a couple of weeks later, I went back to the same school and asked the teacher, how was my daughter doing? And the teacher said to me, what did you do to your daughter? Well, I didn't tell her. It's not what I did to my daughter. It's what I did to you. Because I had made that teacher take notice
Right.
of my child. So I think that sometimes they can be overlooked.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
they could be overlooked because we live in a system where, you know, we all have unconscious bias.
Exactly.
Right? And I remember when I moved here in Kingston after my mom died in 2009, my sister was just going into high school. And from Toronto, you know, there's challenges in every city.
Oh, there are.
But coming here where you're not, you know, she was used to that her class was predominantly diverse, right? You know, she was never the only black child in the school. There was always 3 or 4 or whatever, and more different diversity. But coming here, and she always says, I distinctively stood out,
That's right.
She was almost 6 feet tall, you know, and she felt uncomfortable. And like, I wasn't a teacher, but I knew the system. I was a social worker, and I advocated for her.
Yes.
And I
yes.
think, like, when you were sharing your story about parents who, and as I went along and I did meet other black families and they talked about their kids in their school, many of them left Kingston because parents, maybe they didn't know how to advocate, they didn't understand. And I really feel that it's important for individuals like us in the community. You were a teacher, you knew the system, so you could advocate for your kids. But you didn't just stop there, you shared and helped other families.
Oh, yes, you know, and I would tell them, well, you know, you be sure and go to the school and lay out your case. And very often they did get some relief from things. But, you know, and as you said, how did I find it? Well, you know, it wasn't all sweet for me.
So what was some not sweet stuff?
Well, you know, can you believe it? I had one of my junior kindergarten fellows look me in the eye and tell me he did not like black women teachers.
Whoa! And what did you do?
Junior kindergarten. Well, I took a breath and then I said to him, well, how do you feel about black man teachers? I said, I've got a son. What if he came in? That would have been okay. Just
Kids-
these black women teachers.
Kids tell you what they feel, right?
Exactly.
Right.
They sure do.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of, people of color who said that schooling was a big change for their life. And I know for some people, schools can be a safe place to go. It can be a learning experience. And I remember coming to Canada where my mom was putting me in school. I was 6 years old. And if it wasn't for an ally in her employer, I would have been put back into a grade. So it's this concept that I think that as we move along in our city, we continually have to work about the biases that our system individuals have when they encounter somebody that's different.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how did you maybe help other teachers to move through that bias to help Black students to have that equal space at the table? Because I know you've done a lot. What are some other things that you've done?
I am amazed at what I did myself. But when I noticed things and I knew it was affecting our children, I went to the principal. And I myself said to him, I said, I must speak to this staff. And when we had staff meetings, I spoke out and I told the teachers what was happening with our children within the system. And I'm happy to say they listened. A few of them, did not like what I said, but by and large, most of them did. And they would ask me, what could they do? And they said to me, if you notice something that I'm doing that I should not be doing, they said, tell me. So I was well received.
So that was really good to know, because I think it's important if we're not, I see you as not just an ally, you're an accomplice.
Oh, wow.
It's a good word.
Okay.
You're not going to rob a bank, but we have allies in the community that, yes, if they see something wrong, they'll say it. But you get into the mix. You will go to that principal's office. You will speak up.
Yeah, I do.
Right? And you go in front, maybe that family. So you have been an accomplice. You will be, it's sort of like John Lewis says, you were willing to get in good trouble.
Good trouble,
right?
yes, I love that.
We don't want to go to
John
jail, but we're willing to get into good trouble. And I think that's so important. And that's why I wanted to have you here, to really talk about, you came here, you went to school, you raised your kids here, you helped some families. What are some of the changes that you've seen in the 50 years, in our community here in Kingston?
Before I answer that question, Ophelia, you raised another something in my mind. And, my speaking out like that and talking to principals, I guess the word got around. Because I recall I was then contacted by the Faculty of Education.
Right.
And they asked me every year to come in and speak to teachers. So there I was going in, and I would speak to them about racism that was found in language.
Right.
And things like, when they teach, very often in kindergarten, I would get a helper, and it's time for art, and she'd say, oh, I'm making some flesh color paint. And I learned to say when she was making some flesh color paint, you know what she was making? That nice peachy color.
I remember being in school and that happened. Let's make, the flesh color paint. And I'm like, well, that's not my skin color.
and I said, whose flesh? I said, you look around this class. I said, we've got different colors of flesh. Look at me. And, I got them to make different colors, not to be calling peachy stuff. It could be a flesh color, but there are other colors.
Right.
So different things like that, just to make people aware of the differences.
Yeah. But I think that, that is so vitally important, because it's the little experience that we have that forms, it's like a drop. I had 6 years of growing up in Trinidad, and I've had cousins who were born here, and we talk about, and just friends and family, we talk about our experience. And I look at my niece who's second generation Canadian, and just the other day she had this experience about she got a black Barbie and she got a white Barbie for her birthday.
Right.
And she said something to me, and I noticed that she wasn't playing with the black Barbie.
Wow.
And I said, and she's been very confident. And this means it's just been one experience.
Right.
And I said, why don't you want to play? Well, the white Barbie is pretty. I love her hair.
Oh my, how early it begins.
And that is because this is the first time she got a white Barbie doll. It was just given to her. And I thought about that, how quickly, where else is she getting this? It's not in her home, you know.
That's right.
Maybe it's not in the school or whatever.
But they're getting it.
It's slipping in, it's slippery,
Yes.
it's a slippery slope. So we had a conversation.
Terrific.
And we had a conversation, and it's those little experiences. So you pointing out to that teacher has impacted those kids, because if I'm only getting peachy color to color in, then you're telling me that peachy color is the only color.
That's right. That's right.
and then kids look and think, because my niece, when she talks about, because I said we're black people, she goes, but I'm not black.
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
brown, and you're brown. And then I had to explain to her it's a community. She goes, oh.
And you know, Ophelia, this conversation is great because it's making me go back and think about certain things. And you know, the importance of every little bit
Yes.
that one does can make a difference. You know, for a while, I was teaching at an international school in China.
Right.
And one day, I got in a conversation with one of the teachers, and it was over the flesh-colored thing. And she spoke about something being flesh-colored. And I said to her, what is flesh color? And I said, you know, there are different flesh colors. Anyway, she was from New Zealand. So some months later, after she had been home to New Zealand, she came back to me and she shared a story with me. She said, you know, Judy, I went into a shop in New Zealand to get some pantyhose. And the lady said to me, would you like flesh colored? And I said to her, what is flesh colored?
I love it. I love it.
So I said, it's so important. It may seem like a little change, but every little change can lead to a big difference.
And speaking of change, you've seen a lot of changes in Kingston, and we've talked about it. What is if you could think back, what is the biggest change that you've seen? You've been a teacher, that you've seen in the system now, like with black children. What is the biggest change that you've seen, or what you might be most proud of that you've seen?
Well, to be quite honest, I know that we are now living in the decade of the African people and whatnot, as declared by the United Nations, and they put forward lots of change. But I would have to say the biggest change that I have seen comes in the post-George Floyd era.
Yes.
I have seen so much change. It has given me so much hope. I really feel that we are living in different times. I see different institutions implementing EDII initiatives, and I see many of them, not only are they initiating them, they're carrying forth.
And for the audience, EDI is equity, diversity, and inclusion.
And indigeneity.
So that's important.
It is. And of course, I'm most familiar with the changes made within the Limestone District School Board.
Yes.
Yes, I see that they have not only made initiatives with EDII, but you can see them moving forward.
Yes.
For example, they've made public an equity action plan.
Right.
And I see things being made whereby they've put over $10,000 worth of books that feature different authors in schools for secondary students. They've established a black community group known as Umoja, in which parents of black children can come together and discuss issues.
And that is so important, because we, as a black community, it's so diverse.
Exactly.
And even within a specific culture or nationality, there's tons of diversity. However, I always say that, when I moved to Kingston, you would see, you would be going shopping and you see a black man or a black woman or a black family. There was that little nod.
That's right, that's right.
Oh, I see you, my sister, my brother, even if you don't speak, right?
Yes.
And there was this smile. But now, as you say, 2020, it seems like it's been such a long time. And I would totally agree with you, because the issues, it's not that these issues, as you were talking about, wasn't there.
No, of course not.
These issues have always been there. But the change that I've seen is institutionalized. They're saying, oh, we better pull up our socks.
They're mentioning race.
They're mentioning
they know race is an issue.
But I think from my perspective, Ms. Judith, it's because of the work of people like yourself and other people in the community who didn't give up. It's step by step, because you continue to be our ally for our community. You continue to be an accomplice. You continue to talk about, I would say we're speaking for yourself, for your kids, for my generation, for my sister and my niece, because it takes one of those drops. Because I believe what happened is all those people have been advocating. Since the end of slavery, and we keep advocating. We deserve to be at the table, right? And if and you tell us you move the table, we're going to build our own. Because we're going to build our own. We deserve to be here. And you stayed in the community, you built your family, and all of those things. And when George Floyd happened, most people from Indigenous and Black communities, I'm speaking of for myself.
Yes.
I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked, but a lot of people are like, oh my God, I didn't know this was happening. It's because we had to sit and watch it because we were home.
That's right.
And the other thing is that people in our community were saying, we cannot do this anymore. We demand a change now.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Right? And that is because you stuck with it. So I know you're very humble, but this is for all of us. I'm saying this to you. We thank you for sticking with us. And we thank you for making sure that the flesh color was not just peach. As we're wrapping up the show, I want you to tell a little bit about what you see as hopeful. How do you see the next generation growing? What are some of your dreams that you would like to see our community here in Kingston grow towards?
Well, I would like to see them taking more of a public place.
Right.
Like, I would like to see us get our first counselor, black counselor.
Okay.
There, within here. I must give kudos to the city.
Yes.
I have seen a change in the city, which is very positive.
Yes.
They have set up some committees to look into anti-black racism. And, just as we finished the celebration last month when was August 1st, Emancipation Day, the city rose and they helped us as a community to celebrate. They turned over every stone that they could to help us.
And that was important.
Very important. And I do congratulate them on that initiative. That was one big change that I saw within our city. Yes. And it made me feel even more a part. I thought, wow, this is amazing. Yeah, so I'd like to see our young people, so many of our, not only black young people, though, even the white young people, they don't somehow feel a part of the city. And many of them, when they graduate, they get a chance, they move away. But I'm happy to see more black people are now staying here in the city. So my future is that we can take more of a leadership role in the city now, that we've got the people here. And not to downplay that some of our people are already taking leadership roles.
Yes.
I mean, look at Queen's University. I'm so impressed to see that black caucus that they have. The number of black profs and faculty whom Queen's has brought on board. The changes are amazing.
Change is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And change, the status quo does not change unless we challenge it.
Exactly.
Right? Because if you're comfortable and you're in a position of privilege and nobody's challenging, nothing changes.
And who wants to give up privilege?
Nobody. Because you're comfortable and you love privilege.
Yeah.
So as we come to a close, what is something that has kept you going? Do you have a saying or anything that keeps you going? Because you always have a smile on your face. Every time I meet you, you have that, that joyous, infectious laugh. What is something that keeps you going?
But what keeps me going is that I know I'm not going to take any nonsense. I'm living in this country, in this city, and I am part of this city, and don't let anybody try and put me down.
Yes.
I am a Kingstonian.
Amen.
And I let it be known. And if I see something of which I don't approve, I speak out. You don't sit there and let somebody be digging you and you don't tell them that it hurts. They may not do anything about it, but they know that it hurt me.
Amen.
I keep smiling,
Yes. I am so joyful that you took the time to come in today and share your story. I know we could be talking for hours.
We sure could.
Right?
Yes.
So thank you so much. So today has been inspirational. So what I would like to tell you, the audience that's listening, I hope this inspires you, whether you are Black, brown, Indigenous, that this is your home. If you are here in Kingston and you do not feel that you belong, be inspired by Miss Judith's story. As she said, if somebody has hurt you and maybe you can't speak up for yourself, find somebody that can speak up for you, because we belong here.
Sure do.
We belong in this city. We have a right to be here. However, you come here, if you came here for school, if you came here through immigration, you found a job, however you landed in Kingston, and as a Black person, you belong here. This can be your home. And we've had elders who set the way, who paved the way. So stay, enjoy, live, grow, become a leader. Maybe you already are. But let this be your home and take up space. You are allowed to take up space and say, I belong. Thank you so much for listening, and come back and hear our stories again and again. If your day is not going good, I hope it gets better.